I used to think betrayal would hit like a wrecking ball, loud, undeniable, leaving rubble in its wake. But in my case, it was more like a creak in the floorboards at night. Subtle. Easy to ignore if you don't want to deal with what might be hiding in the dark. I came home from a 2-day business trip to Chicago, standard stuff for my job. I'm a data engineer for a logistics firm in Denver. A decent job, mostly remote now, but sometimes I have to go meet clients or troubleshoot systems on site. I'd only been gone 48 hours. No big deal. Brooke, my wife of 6 years, was already home when I pulled into the driveway. The porch light was on, casting a soft glow on our tidy front lawn, the one she insisted on keeping welcoming for her wellness coaching clients. She greeted me at the door with a hug, a bright smile, and asked if I wanted dinner or just a shower. Normal. Completely normal. Too normal, even. Like the house was staged. I should have known something was off when she didn't ask how the trip went. Brooke always asked. She made a show of caring about the little things, what I ate, who I met, how my flight was. This time, she didn't seem all that interested. As I dropped my overnight bag inside and headed toward the kitchen, I noticed the first crack. 2 wine glasses in the sink. Both half full, one with a lipstick stain on the rim. I stopped and stared at them for a moment. They weren't cleaned, just sort of left there, like someone had meant to rinse them and forgot. We weren't wine people. Not in the casual, pour a glass on a Tuesday kind of way. When we did drink, it was usually craft beer or the occasional cocktail. Red wine was a guest-over thing. Had a little celebration while I was gone? I asked casually, pointing toward the glasses. She glanced at them, then back at me. Oh, yeah, she said quickly, waving it off like it wasn't worth thinking about. Shelby from down the street came over. She brought a bottle. Wanted advice about her posture or something. You know how she is. I nodded, but something didn't sit right. Shelby was allergic to red wine. She told us that at the block party last summer. Still, I said nothing. Just filed it away in the back of my mind like a misplaced puzzle piece. I headed to the living room to unwind, and that's when I found the next sign. A cufflink under the couch. Just one. Gold. Engraved with the initials R.T. Not mine. I don't wear cufflinks. I barely wear button-downs unless I'm presenting to a client. I picked it up, turned it over, and held it in my palm. It felt like something out of place in a home I thought I knew inside and out. I turned toward Brooke, who was lighting one of those eucalyptus candles she loved. When I held it up, her expression didn't even flicker. Where'd you find that? Under the couch. She walked over and took it from me like it was a piece of lint. Must be from one of my corporate workshops. People are always losing stuff. I probably picked it up without realizing and it fell out of my bag. Whose initials are R.T.? I asked. She shrugged. Could be Robert from HR. He always dresses like he's on the red carpet. Honestly, I wouldn't worry about it. I didn't say anything else. I didn't want to be the guy who makes a big deal out of nothing. At least that's what I told myself. Later that night, after she went to bed, I opened the smart lock history on my phone. We have one of those Wi-Fi connected locks that logs every time the door opens and closes. I hadn't looked at it in weeks, but something told me I should. My stomach tightened when I saw the entry. Front door. Unlocked, 11:38 p.m. Tuesday. I had been on the 23rd floor of a hotel downtown at that time, staring at a spreadsheet. Brooke had texted me at 10:06 saying she was headed to bed early. I stared at the log. The timestamp burned into my brain. The next morning, I asked her about it. I tried to sound casual, like it was just small talk. Did something weird happen with the lock Tuesday night? She looked up from her smoothie. Huh. The smart lock said the front door opened around 11:30. She blinked, then smiled. Oh yeah, I forgot. I let the neighbor's cat in. It was meowing on the porch like crazy. Poor thing must have slipped out again. We don't have a neighbor with a cat. At least, not one that visits us. I should have called her out right then, but I didn't. I nodded. Right, makes sense. But I couldn't stop thinking about how smooth her answer was. How easily she shifted things and moved on, like she'd practiced. Then there was the cologne. It wasn't mine. Mine smells like sandalwood and citrus. Something clean. This one was heavy, musky, the kind that lingers long after the person leaves. It was faint, like someone had been there hours earlier, but not faint enough to miss. That scent clung to the hallway, hovered around the couch cushions, and stayed in the air just long enough to get under my skin. When I asked if she'd burned incense or changed the candle, she said no. Acted like I was imagining things. Even made a joke about how I was getting nose paranoid. "You okay, babe?" she asked later that night, curling up next to me in bed. "You seem a little off." I lied, said I was just tired from the trip. She kissed my cheek and turned over. I stared at the ceiling for hours. The weird part was how efficient she was at redirecting. Every time I noticed something off, she had an answer. The wine glasses, a casual visit from a neighbor. The cufflink, a client memento. The door unlock, a stray cat. The scent, my imagination. Each answer just believable enough to make me doubt myself, at least for a little while. That's the thing about trust. You don't lose it all at once. It erodes slowly, like rust under paint. You don't even realize it's gone until something finally snaps. But it hadn't snapped yet. Not quite. I spent the next few days in a fog, watching more than speaking. Her routines felt off. Too polished. Like she was playing a role and hoping I wouldn't look too closely at the script. She had always been precise, organized to the point of being annoying, but now everything felt choreographed. Her phone was always face down. Notifications silenced. She laughed a little too hard at texts she wouldn't let me see. She started showering late at night, right before bed, and always double-checking the front door lock. That smart lock log? It started showing more late-night activity. Unusual patterns. Doors unlocking after midnight and locking again within 20 minutes. But when I brought it up, she had another ready answer. "I've been doing breath work on the porch before bed. Helps me wind down." Breath work. At 12:13 a.m. In February? In Denver? I didn't say what I was thinking. I just nodded. But something in me shifted that week. A quiet click, like a lock disengaging. Not enough to throw the door open, but enough to know it wasn't shut anymore. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Mostly I was confused. Unsteady. Like the floor beneath my life had started to tilt. And while part of me still hoped it was all some weird misunderstanding, another part, deep down, had already started bracing for the truth. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I just started noticing. And once I started, I couldn't stop. After that night, something inside me clicked into a different gear. Not rage. Not sadness. Just awareness. I started noticing things I had been too trusting or too tired to see before. My mind began assembling the puzzle backward, collecting months of scattered observations I had never thought to question until now. The chain of oddities went back further than I wanted to admit. Started with her phone. A few months earlier, she changed her password. No warning, no explanation. I'd known her passcode for years. Not because I ever snooped, but because we shared things. Dinner plans, directions, grocery lists. Then one day I went to check a recipe she'd saved, and the phone was locked. I asked about it, and she just smiled and said she was trying to cut distractions. That made sense at the time. Brooke was big on mindfulness, digital detox, all that. I figured it was one of her wellness trends. But then she turned off location sharing too. That one stung more. Not because I used it, I didn't. I only noticed when I tried to see if she was on her way home and got the message. Location unavailable. When I asked, she brushed it off with a half laugh and said, "Do we really need to be tracking each other like teenagers?" At the time, I didn't think much of it. I wanted to believe her. She had a way of making you feel like doubting her was a flaw in you. Then there were the wellness retreats. First, I was happy for her. She'd worked hard to grow her coaching business, and these weekend trips seemed like the next step. She talked about mountain cabins and yoga instructors, rustic meals and group meditation. But some of it didn't line up. Once, she forgot to clear a receipt from the center console. An expensive spa in Boulder with a full wine bar and an adult-only rooftop deck. That weekend, She had told me she was off the grid in a phone-free nature immersion. I stared at the receipt for a long time. It was dated Saturday afternoon, same time she'd claimed to be teaching breathwork by a river. When I asked her how the retreat went, she said it was transformative. She always used words like that, big, soft words that made it hard to dig into details. Another time, I noticed a charge on our shared credit card for a high-end boutique in Cherry Creek. Lingerie, according to the receipt. Thing is, I never saw that lingerie. Not once. When I asked her about it, she waved it off. A client gift, she said. Referral, thank you. You know how competitive the industry is. I didn't. I nodded anyway. There was a man's jacket in her car once. A tailored navy blazer folded neatly in the back seat. I spotted it when I went to grab jumper cables out of her trunk. She wasn't home, and I didn't think twice about opening the car until I saw it. Still had the dry cleaner's tag on it. I sent her a picture, figuring maybe she picked it up for someone. She replied, "Oops, that's Shelby's boyfriend's. Long story. I'll explain later." She never did. That became a pattern. Things left unexplained. Moments brushed off. Facts rerouted. She started marking blocks of time in our shared calendar as simply unavailable. Before, she was meticulous. Every appointment, every client, every workout color-coded and documented. But then came a stretch of gray boxes. When I asked what unavailable meant, she said, "Just space for me. I need to protect my energy sometimes." I respected that, or tried to, but what really got to me were the contradictions. Her friends' social media posts didn't match her stories. She'd say she was leading a women's empowerment circle in the foothills, but then I'd see a photo of her at a rooftop bar in a dress I didn't recognize, standing beside a man I didn't know. I never brought it up. I wanted to, but something about the way she looked at me, like she was daring me to not trust her, shut me down every time. She had become slippery in her explanations, almost like she was testing the boundaries of how far she could stretch them before I'd push back. And I never really did. The final straw in this mental montage came in the form of a small charge on our account. It was for a boutique hotel downtown, the Marlowe. $282.14. Booked for a Thursday morning. She had told me she was running a pop-up workshop at a community center in the suburbs that day. Left the house early in workout clothes, yoga mat in hand. But the timestamp on the charge said 10:07 a.m. Breakfast and room service. I stared at that line item until my eyes blurred. There wasn't even the usual wellness alibi this time. When I asked how the event went, she launched into a generic story about a woman who cried during a gratitude meditation. No specifics, no names, just that tone of voice she used when she didn't want questions. I didn't tell her I saw the hotel charge. I didn't tell her I'd driven past the community center at lunch and never saw her car. I just said, sounds like it meant a lot to her, and let it pass. But I remembered every detail. I kept stacking them like a quiet tower in the back of my mind, piece by piece, hoping it wouldn't topple over. Because once it did, everything would break. And the thing is, once you stop trusting someone, you start questioning everything. Like the time she said her phone died while she was out with her accountability pod, and came home 4 hours later than planned. Her excuse was that they'd gotten lost on a hike. But the GPS in her car showed the engine idled in a hotel parking garage for almost 2 hours. I only saw that because I was checking tire pressure logs on our shared vehicle app. Another breadcrumb, dropped by accident. Even the way she smiled changed. I didn't want to believe that, but it's true. It used to reach her eyes. Now it felt maintained, like a smile on a flight attendant who hates flying. The day she came home with a tan line from a necklace I'd never seen, I asked if she'd gone swimming at the retreat. She said yes. But later I found a jewelry bag tucked into the back of her bathroom drawer. Tag still on. The necklace was inside. Purchased that same weekend. She never wore it at home. I guess it belonged to another version of her. And I guess I wasn't part of that version. Looking back, it all feels so obvious. But when you're inside it, the picture is blurry. You keep giving the benefit of the doubt, telling yourself not to be paranoid. You chalk it up to stress, to miscommunication, to the fact that long-term relationships go through weird phases. But this wasn't a phase. This was something else entirely. It was there in the way she triple-checked her reflection before leaving for a client dinner, but came home with smudged lipstick and the faint smell of someone else's cologne on her jacket. It was in the way her phone never rang when she was home, but buzzed nonstop when she was out. In the way she started doing laundry separately, in how she suddenly became secretive about her laptop, always closing it when I walked into the room. It was in the tone of her voice when she said, "I love you." Not cold, not fake, just rehearsed, like a line she remembered instead of something she felt. By the time I connected all the dots, the picture had already formed. I just hadn't wanted to look at it. But now I couldn't unsee it. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't jealous. I was right, and it scared the hell out of me. Sometimes the truth doesn't slap you in the face. It drips, slowly, relentlessly, until the floor around you is soaked and you realize you've been standing in it the whole time. But in my case, the confirmation didn't drip. Came in clean, crystal audio. It was a Thursday night. I was sitting at a corporate dinner hosted by a freight software partner, one of those stiff suit-and-tie events where small talk tastes worse than the chicken. I remember being mid-conversation with a sales director from Austin when my phone started buzzing. I ignored it the first time, figuring it was just a calendar reminder or a spam call. But then it buzzed again. Not a call this time, an audio note. From Brooke's smartwatch. That was the moment everything changed. I stared at the screen, confused. She wasn't the kind of person to send accidental messages. But there it was, an audio recording from her device only a few seconds long. No caption. Just a notification from our shared family cloud account. Curious. I slipped out of the banquet room and into the hallway. Pressed play. First, it was just background noise. Muffled voices. Laughter. Music. The faint hum of clinking glasses and a live band playing something jazzy and overpriced. But then I heard her voice. Clear. Familiar. Too familiar. "And you always do that," she was saying, her tone playful and flirtatious. Then a man laughed. A deep, confident laugh I didn't recognize. "I do it because I know it drives you crazy," he said, and she giggled like a teenager. Then his voice again, softer now. "You're mine tonight. No distractions." And just like that, I felt my entire chest go hollow. There was a sound, fabric brushing, maybe a kiss. She said something else, but it was drowned out by laughter from a nearby table. Then the recording ended. My hands were shaking. I stood frozen in the hallway for what felt like years, staring at my phone. My body knew before my brain could catch up. This was it. Not suspicion. Not paranoia. Not a breadcrumb. This was confirmation. I sat down on one of those ridiculous velvet benches near the lobby bathrooms and played it again. This time I turned the volume all the way up, holding it to my ear like it would change what I heard. Didn't. Her voice was unmistakable. I knew that cadence. I knew her laughter. I'd heard it in our kitchen, our bed, our car. I'd memorized it without even trying. And now here it was, tossed into a careless moment with someone else. I checked the timestamp on the recording. 9:43 p.m. She had told me she was attending a professional development dinner that evening. Some wellness industry executive dinner with her mentor and a few peers. It wasn't on her calendar. She'd mentioned it casually, like it wasn't a big deal. I'd been too distracted with work to think twice. But now I was thinking twice. I was thinking 12 times over. I pulled up our joint account on my phone and started scrolling through recent transactions. There it was. 9:17 p.m. Dinner charge at a high-end Italian place downtown. Table for two. The kind of place you have to book a week in advance unless you know someone. Then, another charge at 10:04. Room service at a business hotel 3 blocks away. Same card. Same account. The dinner receipt listed 2 entrees, a shared dessert, and a bottle of red wine. Barolo. Not cheap. Not casual. Certainly not professional. I felt heat rising behind my eyes. Not the kind that makes you want to scream, but the kind that makes you want to disappear. To burn the version of yourself that didn't see this coming. The man who bought her flowers last week. who rubbed her neck while she watched documentaries about silent retreats, who believed her when she said she needed time alone to reconnect with herself. I closed the account app and opened my voice recorder. Hit record. Then, I played the audio clip from her smartwatch again, this time letting it play into my phone's mic so I'd have a backup. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but something about having it felt necessary. Like keeping a key to a locked door I hadn't decided to open yet. I sat there another 15 minutes before heading back inside the banquet room. I don't remember anything about the rest of that night. Not what was said, not who won the raffle, not how I got home. My brain was stuck in a loop, her voice, his voice, the laughter, the clinking glass. That single, awful line, "You're mine tonight." She didn't come home until after midnight. I was already in bed, lights off, pretending to be asleep. I heard her enter quietly, slip off her shoes, tiptoe into the bathroom to wash her face. She moved like someone with something to hide. Every step gentle, every sound muted. She slid under the covers and whispered, "You awake?" I didn't answer. She laid there for a while, breathing slow and steady, like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just spent the evening playing house in a hotel room with someone who wasn't me. I stared at the ceiling and counted my breaths. In the morning, she made coffee and smiled at me across the kitchen island. Told me the dinner was long and boring, that she'd learned a lot, that she was tired from all the networking. I nodded along, pretending to listen, letting her words slide right off the surface of my skin. I had the recording. I had the receipts. I had the room charge and the timestamps and the tone of her voice when she said, "You okay?" It was no longer about doubt. It was about documentation. Later that day, I looked up the hotel where the room service charge had posted. I knew it already, Hotel Larkspur. Mid-range, modern, with strong business class amenities. On their website, I saw a photo of the lounge area. It matched the ambient sounds from the recording. The jazz band, the glasses, the hum of conversation. I made a reservation, not to stay, just to see. That evening, I drove downtown and parked across the street. I walked in, ordered a drink at the bar, and sat in the same space where her laugh had echoed the night before. The band was back. The bartender recognized the name from the receipt. Same guy working both nights. "Busy last night?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, there was a private event, wellness conference thing. That kind of crowd. Pretty social. Had a few couples stay late." I didn't press further. I didn't need to. I already knew. That night, back home, I opened a new folder on my laptop. Evidence. Inside it, I placed a screen recording of the smartwatch audio, a **T of the dinner and hotel charges, the reservation email from Hotel Larkspur, a copy of the bank statement, a voice memo of my own reactions. I wasn't sure what to do next. I wasn't even sure I wanted to confront her yet. But I did know one thing. The truth was no longer hidden. It was here, undeniable and sitting quietly in my inbox. She had been careful, but not careful enough. After that night, something inside me hardened. Not in an angry way, more like a quiet decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to accuse. I wasn't going to give her the chance to flip it around, to cry or deflect or make me feel guilty for noticing. I was going to get everything I needed, and I was going to get it quietly. The day after I confirmed the affair, I started collecting. Nothing dramatic, just small, exact actions. I went through our shared credit card accounts and downloaded every monthly statement for the past year. I categorized charges: wellness retreats, boutique hotels, restaurants we never went to together, odd Uber receipts. I didn't draw conclusions yet. I just flagged what didn't match her stories. Then I exported the smart lock history into a spreadsheet. Each time the front door opened or closed, it logged the time and user. I sorted by date, highlighted nights I'd been out of town. I found more late-night entries. Most of them were around the same window between 10:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., and always followed by the same silent mornings. The pattern was almost surgical. Next, I went to the garage. There's a small utility shelf near the water heater where we toss stuff: bags, gifts, random packages waiting to be recycled. I sifted through it with a flashlight and found a white paper shopping bag, tucked between old yoga mats. Inside was a small gift box, black, velvet, tied with a gold ribbon, cufflinks, the exact style I'd found under the couch weeks earlier. Same gold monogram, R.T. Still unopened, still in its original wrap, with a handwritten note tucked underneath. For your next keynote. Thought of you instantly. B. That wasn't for me. I placed it back carefully, exactly as I'd found it. The next day, while Brooke was leading a corporate rejuvenation session downtown, I checked her work bag. I'd never done that before. Felt like crossing a line, but we were way past lines now. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was confirming what I already knew. Tucked into a side pouch behind her tablet case, I found a hotel key card. Room 621. Branded with the same maroon and cream colors as the Larkspur. No envelope, just the card. I slipped it out, took a photo, and put it back exactly where it was. Later that night, I watched her unpack that bag and toss the card into a drawer like it didn't matter. But it did. It matched the same date and time as the audio from her smartwatch. I dug further. We'd always shared a cloud photo album, a backup system for both our phones. She stopped adding to it a few months back, claiming it was slowing down her storage, but I still had access. I logged in from my laptop and dug through the archives. She had deleted hundreds of photos, but not everything. In the recently deleted folder, I found a few images that hadn't cleared yet. A restaurant table, a champagne flute, a blurry mirror selfie in a hotel bathroom, her, half-turned, dressed in something sheer. Her wedding ring was off. She looked different, looser, like the version of herself I hadn't seen in years. I took *TS, time-stamped, location tagged. She never backed up her messages to the cloud, but I noticed something else: receipts for mobile payments, transfers to a B. Thomas. Memo line, for the studio. Same name linked to several invoices I found in her business files. I Googled it. B. Thomas turned out to be a financial officer for her company. More than that, he was married to one of the co-founders of the wellness startup where Brooke worked. His LinkedIn listed him as Director of Strategic Partnerships. His profile photo matched the voice I heard on the audio recording. Same confident tone. Same smile hiding something. He wasn't just a fling. He was connected. And Brooke wasn't just stepping out on our marriage. She was tangled in something bigger. I started digging into her studio project. According to her, it was a grant-funded initiative to bring movement and breathwork to corporate teams. She'd been pouring time into it for months. But the receipts told a different story. The studio was registered under an LLC partially owned by B. Thomas's spouse. The payment processor listed their joint corporate account as the funding source. And then there was the oddest thing. The address listed for the studio wasn't a studio. It was a private residence, an upscale loft downtown that matched the same location as an Airbnb charge I'd flagged earlier. Brooke had never mentioned an Airbnb. She said she was staying with a friend. When I checked the Airbnb listing, the host's name was masked, but the profile photo showed a familiar face. One of Brooke's close friends. The same one who'd posted a selfie last month from wine country. Even though Brooke claimed they'd been together in the mountains that weekend, it started to come together. There was a network of cover, friends adjusting stories, digital trails being edited, photos deleted, location data disabled. This wasn't just a mistake. It was an operation. And Brooke had lied with precision. Her phone, her calendar, her language. Everything was just vague enough to evade direct contradiction. But she hadn't expected me to look this closely. I opened a private folder on my desktop and named it Trace. Into it I placed an audio recording from her smartwatch, *T of the hotel keycard, smart lock logs sorted and highlighted, joint account statements with matching charges, invoices from the studio, cross-referenced with corporate accounts, *TS of photos, timestamps, metadata, copy of the LLC registration, Airbnb listings and host photos, credit card charges from weekends she claimed to be out of town. I also backed everything up on a flash drive, which I stored at my office. That night, she came home late again. Claimed her workshop had run over. That traffic was bad. That she needed a shower and a glass of wine. I handed her a glass. Said nothing. Let her talk. Let her tell me how the workshop went. How the CEO cried during a meditation exercise. How she felt like she was finally reaching people in a deeper way. I nodded. Took a sip. Said, "Sounds like you're making an impact." And she smiled. That same rehearsed smile. I didn't smile back. Because now I had everything. The thing about lies is that they rarely travel alone. They come in clusters. One lie begets another. And before long, the truth is buried under a web of stories held together by silence and borrowed names. By the time I reached the end of my folder, my digital graveyard of receipts, logs, and timestamps, I thought I knew what I was dealing with. An affair, coworker, a betrayal that spanned months. What I didn't realize, not yet, was that I had only scratched the surface. It started with the studio. I'd flagged the payments, matched them to the LLC registration, and traced ownership back to B. Thomas's spouse, whose name was listed as a consulting advisor to Brooks Wellness Company. But something didn't add up. The studio didn't appear in any local business registries beyond the shell listing. No classes, no permits, no online presence. The address was a loft apartment, not a commercial space. I ran it through public record searches and found the lease was paid under a holding company, one that, after a few layers of ownership, led back to Brooks' employer. This wasn't just a side project. It was a funnel. A few more clicks confirmed it. The studio was funded under a corporate initiative called WellWorks Partners, an internal wellness grant meant to seed new ideas for workplace health and morale. On paper, it sounded perfect. Holistic retreats, custom movement plans, group facilitation. All things Brooke claimed to specialize in. But most of the money from that program, thousands of dollars across just 2 quarters, was routed through the studio's account. And that account led to the same 2 names, B, Thomas and Brooke. They weren't just lovers. They were partners. This wasn't an affair tangled in shadows and guilt. It was strategic, a way to elevate her status inside the company. And I couldn't tell where the personal line ended and the professional one began. That made it worse somehow. I didn't want to believe she was capable of something like this. But the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. She had help. I started examining her phone's metadata. Specifically, photos she posted to her professional accounts, her coaching Instagram, her LinkedIn, her blog, all filled with *TS of nature trails, yoga studios, group circles in sunlit rooms. But something about the GPS tags seemed off. So I cross-checked. One location she listed as Winter Solstice Retreat in Estes Park, actually pinged from the Cherry Creek Mall parking garage. Another labeled Rocky Mountain Cabin Ceremony was geotagged in downtown Boulder. The timestamps didn't match the natural lighting in the photos. Some of them were clearly doctored, blurred backgrounds, pasted sunlight, false shadows. And then I found her friend's name, Callie. The same Callie who had tagged Brooke in multiple posts during their retreat weekends. The same friend who had posted a story from Wine Country, while Brooke was allegedly co-leading a trauma-informed breathwork immersion. Callie's social media was mostly private, but I found enough public posts to see the overlap. The photos Brooke used on her own accounts, Callie took them. The geotags, false. And when I ran the file data on a few pictures Brooke emailed to her clients and newsletters, I noticed something odd. Multiple images had their EXIF data scrubbed and rewritten using the same third-party software. Digital laundering, that's what it was. A way to clean up location histories and make false experiences look real. I reached out to a friend in IT who owed me a favor. Quietly, carefully, I asked for help analyzing some documents. I didn't give names, just PDFs and images and URLs. A few days later, he came back to me with a report. Several invoices from the studio were generated through an unregistered email domain. The metadata on the invoices listed the editing user as none other than my wife. Even worse, some of the forms she submitted to her company's internal finance portal included my name. She'd listed me as a silent investor. That was the final breach. She hadn't just lied to me. She used my identity. I pulled my credit report the same night and found an inquiry I hadn't authorized. An application for a joint credit line through a bank we didn't use. It had been denied due to a freeze I'd put on my credit months earlier, which I'd completely forgotten about. That freeze might have saved me from something I didn't even know she was planning. I printed every page of that report, highlighted the dates, and slipped them into a new folder. This one labeled legal. I wasn't ready to blow it up yet, but I was close. So close. And then came the message that pushed everything past the line. It was an email from Brooke's corporate account. I wasn't meant to see it. It was forwarded to me by mistake because she had once used my address as a backup on her billing notifications. The subject line read, Q3 Compliance Overview, Studio Projects/Flagged Entries. Inside was a standard audit alert. The company's internal compliance software had flagged a handful of unusual payments related to the studio. One of them had been traced to a wellness services vendor, the Airbnb I'd already investigated. Another linked to the same boutique hotel downtown where I knew she'd spent the night with him. There was no smoking G*N, but the smoke was everywhere. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. So I took everything I had, all of it, and assembled it into a dossier. Not for her. Not for confrontation, but for submission. I hired a lawyer, someone who specialized in digital forensics and marital misconduct. I gave her everything, the backup drive, the spreadsheets, the images, the access logs. We reviewed it in silence for nearly 2 hours. She didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped talking, she took off her glasses and said, "You're not just dealing with infidelity. This borders on financial misconduct. Depending on how far it goes, her company could be liable. So could you, if your name stays attached to any of it?" That's when it became real. This wasn't just my marriage unraveling. This was my name, my future. She helped me draft an anonymous package for Brooks Company's compliance department. No accusations, just documents, dates, receipts, a timeline that lined up too neatly to ignore. We sent it through a secure submission portal. Then we waited. Meanwhile, at home, Brooke carried on like nothing had changed. She talked about building out the studio, mentioned that the fall calendar was filling up, said she might be asked to speak at an industry event in Seattle. I nodded, smiled when appropriate, acted interested, but I was gone already.